Grief is among the most powerful of human emotions. It can't be pushed aside, replaced, or outrun. Next week will mark 10 years since a Continental Connection flight crashed into a house in Clarence Center. 50 people and an unborn baby were killed. Today, we begin a week-long series looking back at the tragedy, the toll it took on those who lived through it, and the impact it's had on the community and the airline industry. Sat down with 3 sets of sisters who all lost loved ones on 3407 to explore how they're living with loss and leaning on those who know exactly what they're going through.
So, and I have 3 boys, 3 girls. So
I'm 1.5. Oh, you do?
It may not be the key to a lasting friendship.
Grandma, new grandma.
But it's no surprise people who have a lot in common.
How many grandchildren total now?
I have 6.
Wow.
Seem to be drawn to one another.
We're laughing hysterically. And sometimes tears just come and then we start laughing again.
That's funny, Susan.
Because it's okay.
We do our sisterhood, yeah. Yeah, we've become very, very close friends.
It's just great to be around each other, and
because everybody gets it. We get it.
Yeah.
We can communicate and we understand.
And in that respect, this circle of friends isn't all that unusual.
Hogan 3407 approaching.
But the circumstances that brought these women together isn't something they'd wish on anyone.
Report of a plane crash and a house on fire.
We always said we lost our person. We call them our person. Everybody lost their person at 10:17 p.m., February 12th, 2009. That's amazing that we have that in common.
49 people were aboard Flight 3407 that February night, heading to Buffalo. Most were from here or coming back to see loved ones who call Western New York home. 10 years later, the trauma these women experienced hasn't gone away.
I don't know why. Something terrible came over me, and I immediately reached for my remote and put the TV on, and I saw flames, a plane crash, where it came from Newark, and then I thought possibly he was on that flight.
I remember just shaking, okay, and my husband was driving me and just trying to say, this can't be happening to us again.
people are hysterical, people are sitting there, and I'm like, can't get a hold of my sister, it has to be that she was on this plane.
You try not to think of the moments of terror. I mean, those are places that I don't want to go. What it was like for those people as the plane was flipping on its back and heading for the earth.
Oh, she was a lot of fun. She was, Beverly and I were a year, a week, and a day apart. So I always say we were kind of brought up like twins.
Beverly Eckert spent her life overachieving. She married her high school sweetheart, moved to Connecticut, and excelled in insurance. It was the way she handled loss that inspired her older sisters, Karen and Susan. Beverly's husband, Sean Rooney, worked in the World Trade Center.
I am appearing here today as a member of the Family Steering Committee for the 9/11 Commission.
And was killed on 9/11. Beverly became an advocate and traveled to Washington, where she pushed for the creation of the 9/11 Commission.
It was horrible for her. It was horrible for our family, but we watched her. We watched her pick herself up, do something, and actually do a lot, and go to Washington, and you know, in a public way, but on a personal way, we watched her grow and learn to smile again.
Mary Abraham was the youngest of 4 children. She was in the Army Reserves for 21 years before finding a successful career selling medical equipment.
Mary was full of life, always had a smile on her face.
We were very proud of her. She really did what she said she was going to do.
Tina and Ruth Ann have spent a decade trying to fill the hole the loss of their little sister left in their lives.
It doesn't matter if it's a week, it doesn't matter if it's 10 years. It's a grieving process that you go through the rest of your life. I mean, they're always going to be here, always in your heart.
Very devoted husband, very devoted father with his kids. Coached soccer with them, camp with them.
Kevin Johnston was the director of safety, health, and environment at an adhesive factory in East Amherst. But his passion was his wife, Kathy, and their 3 daughters, and the life he built for them.
It's a lonely world. Who did I know at 51 who was a widow to someone in a plane crash? It was a really lonely spot to be.
Kathy knew right away she needed help. She leaned on her sister Helen, but realizing so many others were going through the same thing, she started a monthly support group through the Red Cross.
You know, you have a death of, for whatever reason, a sudden death, you bury the person, it's kind of over. And ours was a long time.
I need to grieve and I need help.
Well, the violent and very public nature of their loved one's death added a unique trauma to an already horrific situation. But the unusual nature of their connection was something these families actually learned to embrace. In part 2 of my report, I'll show you how these women learned not only to lean on each other, but how they became sisters. It's airing in our next half hour. Well, the word closure means different things to different people. Some say it's like crossing the finish line after coming to terms with a life-altering event. For others, pain of losing someone so suddenly makes a word like closure meaningless. Next week will mark 10 years since a Continental Connection flight crashed into a house in Clarence Center. 50 people and an unborn baby were killed. Today, we begin a week-long series looking back at the tragedy, the toll it took on those who lived through it, and the impact it's had on the community and the airline industry. I sat down with 6 women who lost someone February 12, 2009 to explore how they're living with loss and leaning on those who know exactly what they're going through. Here's part 2 of my special reports.
Grief is an interesting thing
There were people running everywhere.
because it hits everybody differently.
It was a huge ball of flames.
There's no timeline for grief, and I truly believe that.
There was waiting for remains to be identified.
Well, there's 5,800 pounds of jet fuel that was in the plane.
Traumatic.
I don't think there's anything I can say to the families that would ease their pain.
This went on for months and months and months and months and months.
I didn't know if I would ever survive.
For those who had loved ones aboard Flight 3407, just starting the grieving process before their loved ones' remains were identified and personal belongings returned seemed impossible. But these women did have something unique working in their favor.
So many of us were local.
They had each other.
And they've gone through the same thing you have, and you can't imagine how comforting that really is to be part of a larger group that can all share in the same tragedy.
The support group expanded into get-togethers, dinners, even vacations and retreats.
We've bonded, and honestly, I wish they were my friends 20 years ago before this happened.
We're not the gray, dark group that comes and talks about the sadness. We don't talk about that. That's the part that's understood. 10 years. We can talk about it and we can, briefly go through it, but it's about something else and something bigger than that. And today, it's about today.
Well, that salmon sounds good.
This past Christmas, this group got together at a local restaurant to celebrate the holiday and mark 10 years since the crash that nearly broke them, away from the bright lights and attention that's followed them.
A lot of us have the same personalities, I want to say. We just have fun together.
For these women, grief isn't something you beat or bury.
The word closure shouldn't be in the vocabulary. Honestly, I don't think there's a closure. I think you make peace with it.
The images and pain of that fateful night are always there. And some days, they come rushing back.
To this day, 10 years later,
State Police or Sheriff's Department need to find out if anything is on the ground.
I can't believe that had happened.
This aircraft was 5 miles out, and all of a sudden we have no response to that aircraft.
I can't believe that we all went through it.
But here among friends in this group of sisters, those memories quiet down.
We're standing strong today, and I just know Kev's looking down and couldn't be prouder that we made it.
And for one night anyway, the hole left behind by the person they lost doesn't feel quite so deep.
Your heart opens wider. You learn to love again. You learn to be happy again.
And to live life fully, because that's what our person would have wanted us to do.
To our sisters, love you girls.
And that's what we're all trying to do.
And honestly, we all feel like sisters.
You may have noticed at the end of that piece, the sisterhood actually grew a little bit. Karen Walensky, who was able to escape her Clarence Center home when Flight 3407 crashed into it, was reluctant to join that group because her husband was killed in their home on the ground, not aboard the flight. She's since come to embrace the support of the 3407 families. Katie Gibbs sat down with Karen and shares her story later on in the week. You saw Susan and Karen in that piece as well. They were able to follow in their sister's footsteps, Beverly Eckert, and become advocates for change in Washington and airline safety. Katie continues our series Tuesday morning right here on Spectrum News.